20. Kara stepped over the winding dune and into yet another nightmare. In the distance, black armored warriors battered at Luke Olane's gates, shouting with a murderous glee almost inhuman. The defenders above continuously fired down at them, but curiously, their many arrows had no visible effect whatsoever. As far as she could see, almost as if the invaders had somehow made themselves invulnerable to mortal weapons. Judging by what else she could see, the necromancer felt fairly certain that the straining gates would soon crash inward, gaining this savage force entrance. However, the terrible struggle here paled in comparison in her mind to the duel taking place not far from her right. She had found Knaak again, yet with him she had also found not only the demon, but a furious figure clad in armor akin to the men attacking Luke Olane. Akin, that is, save for his crimson helmet. The necromancer immediately recognized Bartek's helm. Now matters made more sense. The armor of the warlord sought to reunite, but it had two hosts with which to contend, and only one who could end up with the prize. Unfortunately for Knaak, he stood to lose everything no matter what the outcome of the combat. Slay his foe, and he became the armor's puppet, failed in the struggle, and he died at the feet of the new warlord of blood. Kara eyed the trio for several moments, trying to consider what best to do. Unable to come up with a satisfying answer, she turned back to her decaying companions. They're locked together with the demons only a few yards behind them. What do you... She talked to the air. Both Tristan and Fotzen had completely vanished, the sand revealing no trace of their path. It was as if they had simply flown into the air and vanished. Regrettably, that left the necromancer's decision completely up to her, and the time looked to be rapidly running out. Knaak had brought the battle to a more even level again, but as Kara watched, the hellish mantis began to move toward the combatants. Kara could think of only one reason why he would do so at such a juncture. Knowing that she had no other option remaining, the Dark Mage leapt forward, racing for the back of the imposing demon. If she could get near enough, she had a chance. The mantis raised one wicked limb high, awaiting the ideal moment to strike. Kara realized that she would not make it, unless, of course, she took a desperate gamble. In her hand, the necromancer already held her ceremonial dagger, which Saint Triss had suggested she might need. Until now, though, her fear of possibly losing it again had kept Kara from considering such an act. The weapon was a part of her calling, a part of her very being, and the only way she could possibly save Knaak. Without hesitation, she took aim at the creature. Zazak's thought. No! But just as the mantis chose to attack, fire burst within him, coursing through his entire body with astonishing swiftness. The monstrous insect stumbled, nearly falling on top of the two fighting figures. Zazak swiveled his head so as to see the cause of his agony, and found in his back a gleaming dagger of made something other than metal. He recognized quickly the intricate runes in the protruding handle and knew then why such a minuscule weapon could cause him so much pain. A necromancer's ceremonial dagger. But the only such being Zazax had come across had quickly been murdered, so surely it could not be. There she came, hurling toward him, despite the fact that she should have been dead. The mantis knew where he had struck her, knew that no human could have rightly survived the blow, not even those who dealt in life and death such as she. You cannot be, he demanded of her, a sense of dread building quickly within him. For all their chaotic origins, demons had a very set sense of how things worked. Humans were fragile. Rip, stab, cut, or tear them apart in certain ways, and they would die. Once dead, they stayed so unless summoned back in the form of some ghoulish servant. This female defied the rules. Dead you were, and dead you should stay. The balance dictates the terms of life and death. Demon, hardly you. She made her right hand into a fist and pointed it at him. An incredible weakness spread through the demon. Zazax teetered and then caught himself. The necromancer should not have affected him so thoroughly, but with her dagger in him, he became far more susceptible to anything she cast. That situation could not be allowed to continue long. Summoning what reserves he had, the mantis used his upper appendages to stir up the sand and then send it flying into the face of the enchantress. As she fought to regain her sight, Zazax's middle limbs bent back in the most impossible manner and sought out the treacherous dagger. It burned terribly, but he forced himself to seize the hilt and try to pull it free. The demon roared as he tugged at the enchanted blade. So great did the pain grow. He would rend her to bloody goblets for this abominable act. He would pinion her, then peel away every layer of skin, every bit of muscle, all while her heart still beat. But just as the monstrous insect felt the blade beginning to loosen, the necromancer uttered her final spell. And before Zazax's eyes materialized the luminescent being so glorious, his very presence burned the eyes of the demonic mantis. He looked manlike, but with all the imperfections washed away. His hair flowed golden, and the beauty of his countenance affected even the demon. However, even overwhelmed by the robed figure's presence, Zazax did not fail to notice the majestic, gleaming sword that the vision wielded with expert grace. Angel! Zazax knew that what he saw had to be an hallucination. Necromancers had reputations for being able to cast such terrifying illusions directly into the minds of their enemies. And even that knowledge could not keep the primal fear from drowning the demon's senses. In the end, Zazax only knew that one of heaven's imperious warriors now came for him. With an inhuman cry, the cowardly mantis turned from Kara and fled. As he did, the dagger slipped from his wound, causing the escaping demon to leave a steady stream of thick, black ichor trailing behind him in the sand. Kara Nightshadow watched as her adversary disappeared into the wastes of Knaak. She would have preferred a more final conclusion to her encounter with the mantis, but in her present state of exhaustion, that conclusion could have just as well gone against her. The spell would keep him from doing any foul play for some time, at least long enough, so Kara hoped, to deal with the unholy threat of the armor. She picked up her dagger and turned toward Norik and his own foe still battled. The necromancer frowned. If the helm stranger won, her course would be quick and clear. Their dagger would see to a swift end to the second coming of the warlord of blood. And if Norik won, Kara had no choice there. Even without a host, the armor could cause no more harm. However won between them, she had to make certain that the victor did not live long enough to draw another breath. Neither Norik nor his adversary noticed the battle taking place beside them. So desperate had their own struggle become. The gauntleted hands of the two flared again as dark sorceries burst into life and immediately died. Although Malevolent did not wear the armor suit of Bartok, the helm alone gave him strength and power matching that now wielded by a willing Norik. Because of that, the fight continued to a stalemate, although both men knew that eventually the end would come for one. I am destined to take his place, snarled Augustus Malevolent. I am more than just his blood. I am his kindred spirit, his will reborn. I am Bartok come back to the mortal plane to reclaim his rightful place. You are no more his successor than I am, returned Norik, not at all aware that his own expression matched that of the arrogant commander. His blood is mine as well. The armor chose me. Maybe you should think about that. I will not be denied! The general slipped one boot under the soldier's leg, forcing Norik off balance. They tumbled to the ground, Malevolent on top. The sand softened some of the blow when Norik's head hit, but still the veteran fighter lay momentarily dazed. Taking advantage of the situation, General Malevolent forced his hand toward his rival's visage. I will remove your face, your entire head, he hissed at Norik. Let us see then who the armor thinks more worthy. The general's red and black gauntlet blazed with wild magic, Malevolent's fingers only an inch or two from making good his dire promises. One hand pinned by his foe's own, and the other trapped between their armored bodies, Norik had little hope of preventing the sadistic general from accomplishing what he desired. At that moment, though, Norik sensed movement behind him, as if a third person had joined the fray. Malevolent looked up at the newcomer, and the triumphant sneer on his countenance switched to an expression of utter bafflement. You! He managed to blurt. Something within Norik urged him to take advantage. He slipped one hand free from the general's, then immediately struck Malevolent hard in the chin. A brief burst of raw magical energy, accompanied by Norik's strike, sending the helmed figure flying back as if pulled by a string attached to his head. Malevolent dropped to the sand some distance away with a harsh thud. The general, too stunned at first to rise, focused only on victory now, the veteran fighter rose and charged toward his fallen foe. In his growing certainty that he had been meant all along to triumph, Norik nearly threw himself on top of the general, an action which would have cost him his life. In Malevolent's hand materialized one of the black blades. Norik barely had time to twist out of the deadly reach, dropping to the sand just beside the fighter. Nork barely had time to twist out of its deadly reach. Dropping to the sand just beside the other fighter, General Malevolent rolled away, ending up in a crouched position. He kept the sword between them, his mocking expression quite evident even within the blood-red helmet. I have you now! Leaping forward, he thrust! The tip of the ebony blade sank deep into the chest of General Augustus Malevolent. The sinister noble, summoning of his enchanted sword, had immediately reminded Nork that he too could call his own weapon back into play. In his haste to at least be done with the mercenary, Malevolent have evidently not considered that last part. As his sword came at Nork rolled forward, at the same time thinking his own demonic blade into existence. Augustus Malevolent's thrust had come within a hair of slicing the veteran's skull in half. Nork had materialized already a third of the way through his adversary's torso. Malevolent gaped at his wound, the blade having skewered him so quickly that his body had not quite yet registered that death was upon him. The general dropped his own weapon, which instantly faded away. And in past battles, Nork Vizerin had taken no pleasure in the deaths of his foes. He'd been paid for a task, and he'd performed that task. But war had never been a pleasure for him. Now, however, he felt a chill run up and down his spine, a chill that stirred him, made him desire more of such bloodshed. He stood up and walked over to the gaping general, who now only slipped to his knees. You don't need this anymore, cousin. With great force, Nork tore the crimson helmet from Augustus Malevolent's head. Malevolent screamed when he did, although not from any physical pain. Nork understood what so troubled the man more than ever the lethal thrust. Understood because at that moment he would have felt the same if someone had tried to rip the armor from his body. The power inherent in Bartek's suit seduced both of them. But in Malevolent's case, he had lost the duel and therefore lost all right to that power. Laying the helmet to the side, Nork took hold of the hilt of the sword. With easy effort, he pulled it free, then inspected the blade itself. No blood stained it. Truly a marvel. It had served him well here. Served him as grandly as it had done at Vizjun. A gauntleted hand grabbed at him. General Malevolent, a manic look on his face, tried desperately to grapple with Nork. Nork shoved him back and grinned. The war's over, General. He readied the sword. Time to retire. One easy sweep left General Augustus Malevolent's head rolling in the sand. The headless torso joined it a moment later. As he reached down to retrieve the fabled helmet, a feminine voice called out to the exhausted but also exhilarated veteran. Nork? Are you alright? He turned to face Kara. Pleased in more than one manner by her unexpected resurrection. In the short time since they had met, she had proven her loyalty to him by sacrificing her lesser existence for his. Had she remained dead, Nork would have honored her memory. But now that she had somehow cheated Zazak's murderous strike, he instead considered her further uses. The necromancer had shown some skill and likely had more sense than the untrustworthy Galena. Her not unpleasing face and form also made him consider her as possibly worthy being of his consort. And what sane woman would spurn the offer of becoming consort to the warlord of blood? I am well, Kara Night Shadow. Very well. He opened his one hand and let the magical sword fall free. As the weapon vanished, Knaak took the helmet in both hands and raised it over his head. In fact, I am far better than well. Wait! The raven-tressed woman rushed up to him, concern in her almond-shaped eyes. Pretty eyes. The new warlord decided, eyes reminiscent of another woman he had briefly known during his apprenticeship in Kechistan. The helmet. Yes, it is mine at last. I am now complete. She pressed against him, placing one hand on the breastplate. Her eyes seemed to implore. Is this truly what you want, Knaak? After all we spoke of earlier, do you now really desire to wear the helmet, to give yourself up to Bartek's ghost? Give myself up? Woman, do you know who I am? I am his own blood. Blood calls to blood, remember? In a way, I already am Bartek. I just didn't know it. Who better to carry on? Who better to bear the title? The legacy. Bartek Shade himself? She countered. There will not be any more Knaak Viserin. Not in mind and soul. And if the armor has its way, I dare say that even in form, you will begin to resemble your predecessor. It will be Bartek who wears the suit. Bartek who reclaims his role. Bartek who slaughters more innocents. Just as he, not you, slaughtered your friends. Friends. The horrific images of the mangled, blood-soaked bodies of Satan Trist and Fotson blossomed once more on Knaak's beleaguered mind. They had been brutally murdered, and had suffered terrible guilt for those murders, for each waking moment. Since then, he recalled quite succulently how the armor had slain each. And now, Kara spoke of other deaths to come. He lowered the helmet slightly, battling with himself. No! Can't let that happen! I can't! His arm suddenly rose again, holding the helmet just above his head. No! Knaak roared, his denial aimed now at the enchanted suit. She's right, damn you! I won't be part of your bloody campaign! But what foolishness! A voice so much like his own whispered in his mind. The power is yours. You can do with it what you wish. A world of order where no kingdom wars, where no one is poor. That is the true legacy. That is all Bartek sought. It sounded so very good. Simple place there. Helmet on his head, and Knaak would be able to change the world to what it should be. The demons would even serve him in this monumental task. Their will subservient to the power of the warlord. He would even create a perfect realm, one that even heaven would envy. And all he had to do was put it on the helmet, accept his destiny. You suddenly felt Kara shift. One hand slipped from the helmet, seizing the necromancer's own in an iron grip that made Kara gasp. From her own hand slipped a gleaming blade of what looked like bone or ivory. She had just been about to use it on him. Stupid female! Knaak snapped, not noticing that his voice did not entirely sound as it should. He shoved her to the sand. Stay put! I'll deal with you in a moment. Despite his warning, the dark mage tried to rise, but arms of sand arose from each side, pinning her to the ground. More sand flowed over her mouth, preventing her from casting any verbal spells. Eyes bright in anticipation, Knaak took hold of the helmet again and placed it on his own head. A world such as he had never known now lay open to him. He saw the might he wielded, the legions he could command. The destiny thwarted by his fellow Vajra could now once more be attained. The warlord of blood lived again! But a warlord needed soldiers. Leaving Kara to struggle, Knaak climbed to the top of the dune and stared at Lukalain. With avid interest, he watched the demonic warriors tear at the walls and gates. The city could not be more than a few moments from bloody destruction. He would let his horde have their fun, let them race through Lukalain, slaying every man, woman, and child, then reveal to them his return to the mortal plane. He imagined the blood flowing everywhere, the blood of all those who feared and hated him, the blood of those who would perish at his command. The dune exploded around him. A pair of dark forms leaping out of the sand. Two strong sets of hands seized his arms, twisting him back. Hello, old friend. A horrifyingly familiar voice whispered on one side of him. It's been a lifetime since we last saw you. The armor head over Knaak shattered for the moment as recognition mixed with sudden terror. Satan? He turned in the direction of the voice. He stared close into the peeling, decaying visage of his dead companion. You haven't forgotten us. How nice. The ghoulish figure smiled, revealing blackened gums and yellow teeth. Unable to flee, Knaak turned his head the other way, only to find thoughts in there. The murdered Vajra's collar had slipped, showing the crusted gap in his throat. No! 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 They pulled him back down the dune, back toward where Kara still fought to free herself. We tried to see you on the ship, Knaak, Trist went on, but you certainly didn't seem so willing to see us. The eyes never blinked, and the stench of death became apparent the longer they held him so near. Their very presence overwhelmed Knaak so much that even the armor could not demand control. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Satan. Fotson, I'm so sorry. Knaak glanced at the gaunt Vajra. He nodded solemnly. We accept your apology, but I'm afraid we have no choice with what we now do, my friend. With remarkable speed and strength, Satan Trist tore the helmet from Knaak's head. It felt as if the Revenant had ripped the veteran's skull off as well. So great did the pain of separation feel. Now Knaak truly understood how malevolent had felt. He cried out, pulling at his captors with a fury even they grew hard-pressed to combat. Hold him! All both gauntlets flared at Crimson. Even caught up in the intense agony coursing through him, Knaak noted the gloves and feared. Feared for his friends, who already died once because of his inability to do anything to stop the armor's damnable actions. That their troubled spirits had followed him, he understood completely. Such an injustice demanded retribution. Unfortunately, the armor had no intention of creating that opportunity. The area around Knaak exploded, sending the two undead hurling away and ripping through the dune from which they had just descended. He stared in horror at the two bodies, fearing that once more they had perished. No, not again! I won't let you do it again! The veteran fighter seized one hand in the other, and although both struggled, this time his determination proved even too great for Bartek's legacy. Knaak tugged, using his own suffering to augment his strength. The right gauntlet came free. Without hesitation, he threw it as far away as he could. Immediately, the troop suit tried to turn in that way and seek after its lost member, but Knaak would no longer be denied. He forced the armor a different direction, that of Luke Lane, now visible through the collapsing gap in the dune. How long he controlled the power and not the other way around, the soldier could not say. Knaak only knew that he had to try to make as much right as possible. So long as his outrage, his guilt, fueled his actions, he had the advantage, and Luke Lane had little enough time. He raised the free hand toward the distant city. The demons had at last torn their way past one of the gates. Knaak could hesitate no longer. Words he spoke had never been taught to him. They had been Bartek's words, Bartek's majesty, but Bartek's memories, his ancestors' memories, had become just as much Knaak's by this point. He knew that they knew what they had to do, and so he willingly spoke them, even though that part of him still in thrall of the armor struggled to prevent it from happening. He had witnessed the wicked spellwork performed by Malevolent and Zazak in the general's tent. Knaak might have noted that what he said almost sounded like Malevolent's incantation, but chanted in reverse. It was, he simply knew that if he did nothing, an entire city would become awash in the blood of its people. And at that point, the end of the incantation, the descendants of the warlord of blood shouted out two last words: Mortius Diablum! Mortius Diablum! Within the gates of Luke Lane, the defenders stood and fought, knowing already that they battled men without souls. Men who were not men, but something far more monstrous. Yet the Sultan's warriors braced themselves for death, even as the citizens prepared to weather the dangerous storm waters and try to escape. The captains of the ships had little hope, though already one of their vessels swamped and another shattered against the side of the docks. The waves roared inland, making it dangerous even to stand near the water. 3 men had already been washed off as they tried to prepare the vessels for refugees. But as all hopes faded, a sight both unsettling and miraculous happened. Just within the city walls, the fiery-eyed soldiers in black stopped, turned their heads and back in clear dismay, and then let loose with a chorus of unearthly savage howls. Then, from out the backs of each, erupted hideous spectral forms with grotesque, inhuman faces and limbs twisted and clawed. Those who witnessed the event would later say that they saw both rage and despair on those demonic faces just before the specters, screaming piously, were cast out into Knaak in 1,000 different directions. For a moment, the army of darkness stood at attention, weapons ready, suddenly empty eyes staring straight. Then, as if all within them had been drained away along with the phantoms, each of the monstrous soldiers began to collapse in on himself. One by one, and then row by row, the invaders dropped. Bones, faded flesh, and fragments of plate spilling into piles that left more than one of Luke Elaine's defenders unable to hold on to the contents of their own stomachs. One of the commanders, the very one whom General Augustus Malevolent had ordered to find Nork Vizerin, became the first to mouth what everyone else thought. Stepping toward the nearest of the grisly sets of remains, the officer gingerly prodded it. "They're dead," he finally muttered, unable to believe he and the rest of his people would live after all. "They're dead!" But how? Narek? He turned to find Kara free, the gleaming ivory dagger ready in her hand. From his left and right came the two revenants, the determination of the dead forever tattooed on their expressions. Kara, he glanced at his former comrades. Watson, Satan, Narek, continued the necromancer. Please, listen to me. No! The mercenary instantly regretted his harsh tone, but she only sought to do what even he knew had to be done. No. Listen to me instead. I've got some control over the armor now, but I can feel that already slipping away. I guess I'm just too exhausted to fight it much longer. How could you manage to fight it at all? He is Bartuk's progeny, after all, remarked Satan. Something that the armor needed in order to fulfill its destiny, but that it did not understand worked both ways. What other answer? She lowered her gaze. Nora could read the pain in them. Although a necromancer, the pale woman felt no pleasure or satisfaction in slaying one who had not chosen to cause such evil. Yet so long as he lived, all humanity lay threatened. You better do it quick! One swift thrust straight through the throat! It's the only way! Narek! Hurry! Before my mind changes! He did not simply refer to any sudden reluctance on his part, and they all knew it. The risk remained that any second the armor might transform him again into the ideal host for its insidious desires. Narek! Do it! This is not how it was supposed to be, rasped Trist in open bitterness. Fountain, he swore to us. The Vajere, of course, said nothing, instead moving toward Norg. With great reluctance, Satan slowly followed suit. Norg swallowed, hoping the madness would end soon. A hand still gloved suddenly rose. Fountain seized it in his own. Best do as he says, necromancer, a sullen Trist murmured. Looks like we don't have long. Kara came toward him, cruelly steeling herself for what she had to do. Sorry, Norik. This is not how it should. Not as it should be. Nor is it how it will be. A peculiar, almost hollow voice answered. Horizon stood a short distance behind the necromancer, but Horizon with something different about him. The glimpse Norik had earlier had of the ancient mage had made him think of Horizon as a cowardly-looking hermit, most likely bereft of most of his wits. However, this figure, while still clad in rags and with hair like uncut weeds, had a presence that made all else around him seem insignificant. Norik had a suspicion now what had made Malevolent look up at the most vital moment in battle. For surely the ancient mage's appearance would have shocked the half-possessed general as well. A massive, unexpected surge of bitterness and hatred welled up within the fighter, all aimed at his foul brother. No! Horizon was not his brother. Once again, the armor sought to re-establish its control, rekindle the insidious spirit of Bartok. Norik managed to fight the emotions down, but he knew that next time the suit would likely prevail. The robed figure moved purposely toward him, and as he did, Norik noticed a curious shimmer around him. The captive's warrior squinted, trying to make out what caused it. Horizon's entire body had been encased in a thin layer of glittering, almost transparent sand grains. Blood calls to blood, the Vajere murmured. His eyes stared brightly, never blinking. Even the two undead, holding on to Norik, seemed taken aback by his presence. And blood will end this travesty now. Norik could feel the will of the suit battering at his mind, struggling physically with his body. Only the combined efforts of he and his comrades kept it from succeeding for the moment. Horizon? Kara whispered. The white-haired sorcerer glanced her way, and the woman stepped back. No! You are him! But you are also not. He gave all of them a condescending smile. This living shell is another's. A too curious sorcerer who long ago found the Arcane Sanctuary by accident. but in the process, lost his senses forever. I have watched over him ever since, feeling some responsibility. Before going any further explanation as to what in the underground sanctum might have destroyed and might so, the glittering figure glanced at his borrowed hands. So fragile is flesh. More stable and lasting are earth and stone. You, Cargan, her eyes nearly as wide as her mouth. I know you at last. He talked to you, so he can even obey you. The great horizon seemed so willing to obey you, which made no sense until now. You are the presence I felt. The presence of the very sanctuary itself. He nodded, his own eyes never blinking once. Yes! Over time, it just seemed the natural path, the natural way of things. Still battling the insidious incursions of Bartek's enchanted armor, it took Knaak a moment longer to understand, and when he did, the answer so astounded him that he nearly dropped his defenses. Horizon and the Arcane Sanctuary were one and the same. My own mind almost shattered by what I had been through. I came here to escape the memories, escape the horror, and so I built my sanctum and dwelled underneath the sand, away from the events of the world. A smile crossed the false Horizon's face, the sort of smile attempted by someone who had all but forgotten such minor mortal practices. And as I kept remaking my domain over and over in my own image, it became more meaning than the faltering shell I wore, until at last one day I gave what remained within and took up a new, stronger, and far more durable form. And so I have been ever since. Of course, I might have gone on further, but at that moment Knaak's world turned blood red. He felt an all-consuming rage build. He would not be denied again. Horizon had escaped his wrath at this June, but even if he had to burn away the entire desert, the warlord would have his final vengeance. Horizon's puppet looked his way again, holding out one hand as if asking something of the armored figure. A gauntlet, the same one Knaak had earlier thrown away, materialized on the aged sorcerer's own hand. Blood calls to blood. And I'm calling you, brother. Our war is over. Our time is over. We are over. Your power negates mine. Mine negates yours. Join me now where we both belong, far from the sight of men. The other goblet tore free from Knaak, flying over to the glittering figure's ungloved hand. Then in rapid succession, each piece of armor from his legs, torso, and arms flew forth, the crimson suit quickly remaking itself bit by bit on the elder's body. Somewhere along the way, the torn-stained robe of the hermit vanished, replaced by other garments more suitable to the armor. Even the boots Bartek had worn left Knaak to join the rest of the suit. The false Horizon raised his arms as his astonishing work went on, eyes never blinking, lips set grimly. With each loss, Nork's mind edged nearer to what it had more or less been like before the armor had claimed him. The memories and thoughts became wholly his own, not that of a murderous demon master. Yet he could never be rid of the terrible days since the tomb, never be rid of the horrors and death of which he had played an unwilling but great part. And when he was done, the white-haired figure stretched out a gauntleted hand again, summoning the helmet. Placing that in the nook of one arm, Horizon's puppet looked over Nork and the others. It is time for the world to forget Bartok and Horizon. You would do well to do the same. All of you. Wait! Kara dared approach the inanimate figure. One question, please tell me. Did you send this one? She indicated Horizon's host. To find me in Luca Lane? Yes. I sensed something amiss and knew that a necromancer so near, a necromancer who should not be in the city above, had to be involved. I needed you closer so that I could discover why. As you slept, as you ate, I learned what I needed to know from you. He stepped back from all of them. Our conversation is at an end. I leave you on your own now. Remember this, though. The Arcane Sanctuary exists in many places, has many doorways. But I advise you now to never seek it again. His darkening tone left him with no doubt as what he meant by the last. Horizon had no desire to be a part of the living world again. Those who would disturb him would risk much. He suddenly seemed to lose form and sustenance, bits of him crumbling away, as if even flesh and metal had become grains of sand. With each second, the armored mage looked less like anything mortal, and more a very part of the landscape. Norik Vizorian, Horzan called in that odd echoing voice. It is time to create your own legacy. Clad in the same garments he had worn upon entering Bartok's tomb, even his own boots having somehow been returned to him by the astounding sorcerer, Nork pulled free from the revenants and started forward. Wait! What do you mean by that? But Horizon's host, now a man completely of sand, only shook his head. Of all of him, only the eyes remained somewhat human. Even as Nork neared, the figure shrank, his sandy form melting into the dunes around. By the time the veteran reached the area, it was already too late. Only a small lump of loose grains remained to mark Horizon's past presence. Seconds later, even that no longer existed. It's over, Kara quietly remarked. Yes, it is, agreed Saint Trist. Something in his tone made Nork now turn to the two ghouls. Both undead had a peculiar look in their eye, as if they waited for something else to happen. The necromancer guessed it first. Your quest is over, is it not? Just as if with Horizon, your time in this world is at an end. Watson nodded. Satan gave what seemed a sad grin, or perhaps his failing flesh and muscle simply made it seem so. He came when he felt the armor stir, but too late. So he granted us this chase, but with the promise that when finished, so would we. He? Nork asked, joining Kara. But it was my spell and my dagger that brought you back. His trickery to throw you off. The smaller of the undead looked around. Sanctimonious bastard! can't even show up now that it's over. However, as he finished, a brilliant blue light suddenly shone down on the floor, turning their small patch of desert as bright as, if not brighter than, a cloudless day at noontime. Saint Trist would have spat in disgust if such a simple feat had been within his ability anymore. Instead, he shook his head, or rather, let it rock back and forth once, then added, "Should have known better, damn strutting angel." Angel? Knaak looked up in the direction of the light, but found no source for it, much less an angel. Still, what else could explain so much? The ghoul glared at it. "At least, show yourself." When nothing happened, he glanced at Knaak and added, "Typical, just like his kind, hiding in the shadows, pretending they're above it all, but putting their hands in everything." "I know this light," Kurt muttered. "I caught a glimpse of it in the tomb. It is what drew me away from your bodies." "He likes his tricks. The Archangel does," Trist-eyed Watson, who nodded again. The two living members, the wiry revenant, continued, "And for his last one." "Damn you, Satan, no!" Knaak scowled at the heavens, scowled at the unseen angel. "It's not fair! I had no choice in the matter. Please, it's time, and we want it so, Knaak." "You can't mean it!" Shedden chuckled, a harsh sound. "I swear it on my life, friend." The blue light focused suddenly on the revenants, bathing them in such brilliance that Knaak had to shield his eyes. Watson, the smaller ghoul, became harder and harder to see. "Time to buy that farm you always wanted, Knaak." The light flared then, becoming so intense that it momentarily blinded the veteran and his companion. Fortunately for both, the burst lasted only a few seconds. But even with that, by the time their eyes recovered, it was to find that not only had the heavenly illumination completely faded away, but with it had gone the two undead. Knaak stared at the spot, at first unable to speak. A hand touched his own. Carnage Shadow gave him a look of sympathy. They have moved on to the next step in the eternal journey, on to their next role in helping to maintain the balance of the world. Maybe. Wherever they had gone, Knaak knew that he could be of no aid to them. The best he could do was keep their memories alive in him, and do something with his own life in honor of the friendship the three had built. He glanced up again, noticed for the first time that the ever-present storm clouds had finally quieted. In fact, they had already begun to dwindle to the point where patches of clear sky could be made out. "What will you do now?" the necromancer asked him. I don't know. He glanced in the direction of Luca Lane, the only sign of civilization for days. Go there first, I suppose. See if they need any help cleaning up. After that, just don't know. What about you? She, too, looked to the far-off city, giving him a chance to study her profile. Luca Lane makes sense also. Besides, I wish to discover where the Captain Geronin and the King's Shield are there. I owe him a debt. He treated me well, as if I were his own daughter, and he probably fears I drowned it at sea. Having no desire to part from her company just yet, Norg responded, "Come with you then, if you don't mind." That brought an unexpected smile from Kara. Nork liked it when the dark-haired woman smiled. Not at all. Recalling the ways of the many nobles he had served, Nork offered her his arm, which after a moment's hesitation, the necromancer took. Then together, the weary pair made their way through what remained of the ruined dune and headed back towards civilization. Neither looked behind them to where the head and body of General Augustus Malevolent already lay half covered by the drifting sand, where Horizon and the armor had faded into the desert itself. The weary, battered soldier especially had no desire to be reminded of what happened, and what could have happened if matters had been taken a turn to the dark. The legacy of Bartok. The legacy of the Warlord of Blood had been buried once again from the sight and knowledge of all. This time, hopefully, forever.